What's up, everyone, and welcome. This is your Cybersecurity Weekly for the week of August 31st to September 6th, 2021. I know it's Monday to Monday, but that's just how I do it. We are going to take a look at all the security events that happened in the last week. In this episode, I'm going to start off by showing you just how much the US government is getting involved in cybersecurity.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
So let's jump right in. The first story here is the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission announced sanctions against 8 entities belonging to 3 companies over email account hacking due to cybersecurity failures. The companies were not able to protect the confidential information of their customers. The Securities and Exchange Commission today sanctioned 8 firms and 3 actions for failures in their cybersecurity policies and procedures that resulted in email account takeovers exposing the personal information of thousands of customers and clients at each firm, read the announcement published by the SEC. The sanctioned entities are Cytera. They provide an advisory networks, investment services, financial specialists. They are advisors and investment advisors. Then there's Cambridge Investment Research, which is an investment research company and does investment. They are investment research advisors. And then KMS Financial Services. SEC sanctioned Cytera because it has exposed the personal information of at least 4,388 customers and clients between November 2017 and June 2020, allowing unauthorized third parties to hack into more than 60 cloud-based email accounts belonging to its staff. The Securities and Exchange Commission also claims that the company did not provide clear information about the attacks in the breach notifications sent to impacted individuals. The Commission also sanctioned Cambridge University Research after 121 email accounts belonging to the company had been hijacked between January 2018 and July 2021. The hack resulted in the exposure of information belonging to at least 2,177 customers and clients. In this case, the SEC claims that Cambridge had failed to take action to improve defense of its email system until 2021. Now, the last company that was sentenced was KMS because 15 financial advisors or their assistants had their email accounts hacked between September 2018 and December 2019. The intrusions caused the exposure of information belonging to nearly 5,000 clients and customers. The Securities and Exchange Commission also states that the company failed to implement additional security measures until August 2020. Now, Cytera is going to pay $300,000, Cambridge is going to pay $250,000, and KMS is going to pay $200,000, which, I mean, considering the size of these corporations, is nothing. But why is this important? Well, up until now, companies have pretty much gotten off, I'll say, scot-free when they lapse in their security plans. Now, a closer eye is being kept on companies, and you'll see in this weekly that the U.S. government, through various agencies, is really stepping up their monitoring of cybersecurity. So I think the days of not investing top dollar in cybersecurity for companies, big and small, are over. Especially if you're in any way connected to industries related to finance, or anything that is deemed to be too big to fail or system critical, like oil, gas, electricity, coal, health, food, etc. So let's jump into the other security news where we're going to start to see where the government's getting involved. So the SEC warns of investment scams related to Hurricane Ida. So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's Office of Investor Education and Advocacy is warning investors of potential investment scams related to Hurricane Ida. Scammers will likely target individuals and organizations that are eligible to receive large payouts from insurance companies to compensate for the damages caused by Hurricane Ida. In the aftermath of a natural disaster like a hurricane, organizations attempt to earn by investing in companies that provide cleanup and repair services. Crooks leveraged social networks and spam messages to promise to the victims high returns for investments in small investments in thinly traded companies that will make huge profits from cleanup and recovery efforts. The SEC warns individuals who receive huge sum insurance payouts to be extremely wary of potential investment scams related to Hurricane Ida. Now, for example, the SEC brought a number of enforcement actions against individuals and companies who made false and misleading statements about alleged business opportunities in light of damage caused by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Some of those cases involved pump and dump scams, where fraudsters used bogus news to pump up the stock price of small companies so they could sell their own shares at artificially high prices, read the alert published by the SEC. Fraudsters also may target individuals receiving compensation from insurance companies, so be aware. USCYBERCOM and CISA warn organizations to fix CVE 2021-26084 for the Confluence flaw. So they issued an alert to warn U.S. organizations to address the Atlassian Confluence CVE 2021-26084 vulnerability immediately ahead of the Labor Day weekend. Government experts are aware of the ongoing mass exploitation of CVE 2021-26084 flaw and believe it could rapidly accelerate. Threat actors started exploiting the CVE 2021-26084 vulnerability in Atlassian's Confluence Enterprise Collaboration product a few days after it was patched by the vendor. So just because the vendor patches it doesn't mean everybody installs it or installs that patch or upgrades. So at the time of this writing, or the writing of the article, experts only observed threat actors exploiting the issue to deliver cryptocurrency miners, but attackers could start exploiting them to deliver other malware, including ransomware. Last week, Atlassian released the security patches to address the critical CVE 2021-26084 flaw that affects the Confluence Enterprise Collaboration product. The flaw is an OGNL injection issue that can be exploited by an authenticated attacker to execute arbitrary code on affected Confluence servers and data center instances. Next up, FBI warns of ransomware attacks targeting the food and agriculture sector. The FBI Cyber Division issued a private industry notification to warn of ransomware attacks targeting the food and agricultural sector, disrupting its operations, causing financial loss and negatively impacting the overall food supply chain. Cybercriminal threat actors exploit network vulnerabilities to exfiltrate data and encrypt systems in a sector that is increasingly reliant on smart technologies, industrial control systems, and internet-based automation systems. Food and agriculture businesses victimized by ransomware suffer significant financial loss resulting from ransom payments, loss of productivity, and remediation costs, read the FBI's PIN. Companies may also experience the loss of proprietary information and personally identifiable information and may suffer reputational damage resulting from a ransomware attack. The FBI went on within the PIN, they provided a series of examples of ransomware attacks impacting food and agricultural sector businesses, such as an attack that took place in January 2021 against an identified U.S. farm that resulted in losses of approximately $9 million due to the disruption of the farm's operations. The attackers targeted the internal servers by gaining administrative level access through compromised credentials. In another incident that occurred in March 2021, a ransomware attack blocked the operations at a U.S. beverage company, while in a November 2020 attack on a U.S.-based international food and agricultural business, threat actors requested the payment of a gigantic $40 million ransom. The good news is in the latter attack, the victims restored its by backups, right? So they didn't have to pay. The most clamorous attack against the sector was orchestrated by the Revel Gang, remember them, against JBS Foods, remember that attack, which disrupted its operations. Now, the FBI provided the following mitigations to protect against ransomware attacks: regularly backup data, air gap, and password protect backup copies offline. Ensure copies of critical data are not accessible for modification or deletion from the system where the data resides. You're going to notice that the recommendations that they're making are expanding. The second one is implement network segmentation. Third is implement a recovery plan to maintain and retain multiple copies of sensitive or proprietary data and servers in a physical, separate, segmented, secular location. In other words, hard drive, storage device, etc., cloud, etc. Next up, install updates and patch operating system software and firmware as soon as they are released. And then we go on to use multi-factor authentication with strong passphrases where possible. Use strong passwords and regularly change passwords to network systems and accounts, implementing the shortest acceptable time frame for password changes. Avoid reusing passwords for multiple accounts. Disable unused remote access RDP ports and monitor remote access RDP logs. Require administrator credentials to install software. Audit user accounts with administrative privileges and configure access controls with least privilege in mind. Install and regularly update antivirus and anti-malware software on all hosts. Only use secure networks and avoid using public Wi-Fi networks. Consider installing and using a VPN. Next, feds warn of ransomware attacks ahead of Labor Day. Citing historical precedents, the FBI and CISA put out a joint cybersecurity advisory Tuesday, which was last week, noting that ransomware actors often ambush organizations on holidays and weekends when offices are normally closed, making the upcoming 3-day weekend a prime opportunity for threat activity. This was within one of my dailies last week. Modern cyber criminals use some pretty sneaky tactics to maximize the damage and collect the most money per attack, noted Eric Cron, security awareness advocate at security firm KnowBe4, in an email to Threatpost. Because organizations are generally short-staffed over holiday weekends, the swiftness with which they can respond to attacks that occur during these times will be impacted, he went on to say. Now, this additional time gives attackers the ability to exfiltrate more sensitive data or lock up more computers with ransomware than they otherwise might have been able to. Next up, the US DOJ announces the creation of Cyber Fellowship Program. The US DOJ announced a new Cyber Fellowship Program for training selected prosecutors and attorneys on cyber threat and threat actors. The course is coordinated through the Criminal Division's Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section. The training aims at personnel from various departments which are focused on cyber defense, such as the Criminal Division or the U.S. Attorney's offices. The training will provide details about cybersecurity-related cases, such as operations of state-sponsored threat actors and cybercrime organizations, and related TTPs. The program will require all trainees to secure a top secret security clearance and commit for the entire duration of the program, which is 3 years. The training will be held in the Washington, D.C. area. So, as you can see in these last few articles that just happened in the last week, that the U.S. government is really stepping up and attacking the problem of cybersecurity from different agency or angles or agencies. Is it enough? I don't really think so. I hope that they can put more effort into putting out more guidelines and rules in place for different systemic industries. I hope that they can provide more help to these industries as well as to small businesses. We're forgetting that these small companies tend to be third parties to these larger organizations, and they're oftentimes the ones that are getting breached. And through traversal up the chain, these larger corporations are also then being affected. So I think, we can't just focus on these large corporations and helping them out and putting out rules. And we also have to find a way to help these smaller organizations also, upgrade their security. In some cases, they can't just afford it because they don't make enough money or they don't feel they're large enough. But because they are third parties, they are the ones that are going to be affected or attacked, and then through a traversal, as I said, they'll move up the chain to these larger organizations. So I think the U.S. needs to treat cyber terrorism more like how they treat physical terrorism. Now, I understand that they first need to kind of get their own house in order and make sure that the teams are up to the challenge, but this is one of the things that they really need to sort of fast track and speed up, because as we see every single day, more breaches, more attacks, not just from willy-nilly hackers out there, people trying to have fun. These are really larger organizations. Let's move on. The source code for Babuk is available on a hacking forum. Now, a threat actor has leaked the source code for the Babuk ransomware on a Russian-speaking hacking forum. The Babuk locker operators halted their operations at the end of April after the attack against the Washington, D.C. Police Department. Experts believe that this decision of the group to leave the ransomware practice could be the result of an operational error. It was a bad idea to threaten the U.S. Police Department due to the information that it manages. The ransomware gang broke into into the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, encrypted files, and demanded a $4 million ransom. At the end of May, the Babuk ransomware operators rebranded the ransomware leak site into payload.bin and started offering the opportunity to other gangs to use it to leak data stolen from their victims. Some members of the group relaunched the ransomware as a service as Babuk version 2. Now, the security research group VX Underground shared shocking news that a Russian youngster who is believed to be one of the developers of the Babuk gang has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and decided to leak the complete Babuk source code for Windows, ESXi, and NAS servers. Researchers from McAfee Enterprise confirmed that the source code is legit. An Israeli firm, Bright Data, formerly LUMINATI Networks, enabled the attacks against KARAPATAN. So the 25 days long denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack against the website of KARAPATAN was launched by almost 30,000 IP addresses, whereas 1/3 of the addresses originated from devices that were not running open proxies or Tor exits. Identifying this mysterious part of the botnet turned to be a fascinating research and digital forensics challenge. I highly recommend reading this article. It is in its entirety. The processes the company used to dig deep into the data and find out who's behind this distributed denial of service is really inspiring, and you can get some really great insights for your own research. The traces of these IPs that were not Tor or open proxies led researchers to an Israeli firm offering access to millions of proxies in mobile operators, data centers, and residential buildings, a perfect infrastructure to hide the source of the denial of service attacks. While analyzing the IPs used in the attack, a few patterns happened to show quickly. The first one was that most of the addresses came from a number of mobile providers in Russia and the Ukraine, such as MTS, Megaphone, T2 Mobile, PVimpelcom, and Kyivstar. A review of hundreds of the servers in these DNS infrastructures revealed hundreds of proxies with the banner containing proxy authenticate basic realm equals LUMINATI. Now, LUMINATI was the name for this company before they changed it to Bright Data, but they were still signing it with LUMINATI, which, bingo, now you know who it is. Now, Bright Data, who was again formerly LUMINATI, with headquarters in Netanyahu, Israel, offers access to millions of proxies in mobile operators, data centers, and residential buildings, and promises to unlock any website and collect accurate data to make data-driven business decisions. Their business practices have been long criticized for their use of mobile VPNs and other backdoored mobile apps to gain access to residential and mobile devices. So again, highly recommend you read that article. It details how they went through and sort of scraped through the IP addresses and data and then dug around to break it down and find out that it really was at least made possible through Bright Data, formerly LUMINATI. A 15-year-old malware proxy network VIP72 goes dark. Now, this was one of my dailies, so if you've seen this, you're more than welcome to skip it. Over the past 15 years, a cybercrime anonymity service known as VIP72 has enabled countless fraudsters to mask their true location online by routing traffic through millions of malware-infected systems. But roughly 2 weeks ago, VIP72's online storefront, which ironically enough has remained at the same US-based internet address for more than a decade, simply vanished. The domain VIP72.org was originally registered in 2006 to Corpse, the handle adopted by a Russian-speaking hacker who gained infamy several years prior for creating and selling an extremely sophisticated online banking Trojan called A311 Death, also known as Hackstore and Nuclear Grabber. Hackstore was way ahead of its time in many respects, and it was used in multi-million-dollar cyber heists long before multi-million-dollar cyber heists became daily front-page news. Now, it remains unclear what happened to VIP72. Users report that the anonymity network is still functioning, even though the service's website has been gone for 2 weeks. That makes sense since the infected systems that get resold through VIP72 are still infected and will happily continue to forward traffic so long as they remain infected. Who knows, perhaps the domain was seized in a law enforcement operation. Now, I did some more digging, I did some research, and I found some ads on Google, as you can see here, that lead to a site that is accepting payment, claiming to be VIP72. Now, everything on them works as if it is VIP72, but when I did even more digging, I saw that it was a masked domain. The unmasked domain is, for the first ad, is xn-vp72-lza.com. Now, I had looked it up and saw it was registered on August 27th with Namecheap. And I also checked the crypto accounts and saw that funds were paid into it, making me believe it was an attempt to bring the sales site part of VIP72 back online in some fashion, especially since if it was a fraud, I would have thought that Namecheap or the hosting company would have taken it down already. There's the crypto accounts are real, and the Bitcoin wallet has 51 payments for about 5K all the way back to the beginning of September. The Litecoin account has received about $1,000. So all indications at this point are that these two ad sites are fakes. So if you send them Bitcoin or send them Litecoin, it's not going to get you access to VIP72. Leaked Guntrader firearms data file is shared. The worst case scenario: criminals plot UK gun owners' home addresses in Google Earth. The names and home addresses of 111,000 British firearm owners have been dumped online as a Google Earth compatible CSV file that pinpoints domestic homes as likely firearm storage locations, which is a worst case scenario for victims of the breach. As an exercise in amplifying a data theft to levels that endanger public safety, the latest evolution of the Guntrader database break-in is likely to become an InfoSec case study in how security breaches can become worse over time as stolen information is put to ever more intrusive uses. Leaked online last week via an animal rights activist blog, the stolen, reformatted Guntrader database was explicitly advertised as being importable into Google Earth so randomers could contact as many owners as you can in your area and ask them if they are involved in shooting animals. Names, home addresses, postcodes, phone numbers, email addresses, and IP addresses are included in the Google Drive hosted CSV file, along with precise geographic coordinates for a large number of the 111,000 people listed in the breach. Now, Google has removed the CSV from the Google Drive, but that's pretty serious. It could lead to, break-ins at companies. One guy who was in the list said, yeah, I'm a gun owner, but the address listed is of my parents. There are no guns there, so the information is wrong. So anybody, people could be trying to, let's say, scheme how they can break into the house and steal guns, but is going to break into this guy's parents' house who has no guns, and it can really escalate from there. Or somebody could try to break in and then get shot by the person who has the gun. So, really bad idea. We move on to phishing. Malicious Word file disguised as purchase and sales agreement for export-bound gold bars. Now, the ASEC analysis team discovered a malicious Word document disguised as purchase and sales agreement for the export-bound gold bars and would like to inform the readers about it through this post. Judging by the title and body text of the original document on which the distributed document is based, it appears that the original was created in the past and was recently distributed following a revision. So here's the document title, 1MT Business Terms 2014-0428, indicating it was done in 2014. The document information was last printed date as April 20th, 2014, as last modified on August 14th, 2021. The file is protected, and once the internal malicious macro is run, it removes protection and the image inserted by the attacker to show the content. So this document creates an XML file that prompts to access a malicious URL in a certain path and runs it with wscript.exe, which, while it seems that the document will connect to the URL shown below and perform additional malicious behaviors, the team could not check further as the network is currently disabled. So you see here the XML create path, and you see the connection URL as regedit.onlinewebshop.net, and blah, blah, blah. As always, the team urges users not to open document files with unknown sources and recommends updating version 3 to the latest version. And Labs Anti-Malware Product version 3 detects and blocks the malicious document using the aliases provided. We move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Cream. Cash rules everything around me. They've got it in their logo. Crypto rules everything around me. Cream Finance is a decentralized lending protocol for individuals, institutions, and protocols to access financial services. It promises earnings to users who are passively holding ETH and WBTC. The security breach was confirmed by the company with a message via a tweet. Always a great way to say, hey, we lost $29 million. Just tweet it out there. The blockchain security firm PeckShield first spotted the attack and published a series of tweets containing evidence of the security breach. According to Cream Finance, attackers conducted re-entrancy attack in its flash loan feature to steal 418,311,571 in AMP tokens and 1,308.09 in Ethereum coins. The AMP token contract implements ERC77-based ERC1820, which has the _call pre-transfer hooks for re-entrancy. Thank you at PeckShield for assisting with this investigation, states the DeFi platform. Now, re-entrancy attacks consist in withdrawing funds repeatedly before the original transaction is approved or declined. According to PeckShield, the attackers exploited a bug in the ERC77 token contract interface implemented by Cream Finance to interact with the Ethereum blockchain. Now, seriously, if you're a crypto company and have not taken cybersecurity seriously, then you should be shivering in your tighty whities. They're coming for you, so knuckle up and guard your grill. Anomaly threat research experts have monitored recent spear phishing attacks conducted by financial-motivated threat actor Fin7. The messages used weaponized Windows 11 alpha-themed Word documents with Visual Basic macros to drop malicious payloads, including a JavaScript backdoor in an attack aimed at a U.S. point-of-sale service provider. The attacks took place between late June and late July 2021. Experts noticed that the infection process stops when detecting Russian, Ukrainian, or several other Eastern European languages. The specified targeting of the ClearMind domain fits well within Fin7's preferred modus operandi. As a California-based provider of POS technology for the retail and hospitality sector, a successful injection would allow the group to obtain payment card data and later sell the information on online marketplaces, reads the analysis published by Anomaly. The use of a JavaScript backdoor is also primarily associated with Fin7 and is a common feature within its campaigns. The threat actors employed a variation of a JavaScript backdoor used by the Fin7 group since at least 2018. Fin7 is a Russian criminal group that has been active since mid-2015. It focused on restaurant, gambling, and hospitality industries in the U.S. to harvest financial information that was used in attacks or sold in cybercrime marketplaces. The attack chain began with a Microsoft Word document containing a decoy image claiming to have been made with Windows 11 Alpha. The image asks the recipient to enable editing and enable content to access its content. Upon enabling the macros, a heavily obfuscated VBA macro will be executed to retrieve a JavaScript payload. The malicious script also checks for virtual machines to prevent the analysis in virtualized environment. In order to avoid the analysis, the threat actors also inserted junk data in a VBA macro. This is a common tactic used by threat actors. Now, the researchers attribute the attack to Fin7 due to similarities in the TTPs, the victimology associated with the cybercrime gang, and the use of a JavaScript-based payload to harvest sensitive data from the victims. Last week, Bangkok Airways, or the prior week, publicly acknowledged that it had been blasted with a cyber attack a week ago on Monday, on August 23rd. It's still investigating the incident as a matter of urgency, the company said in a press release, and is working on beefing up its defenses. Since then, I haven't heard anything about this beef. The attackers evidently didn't manage to access Bangkok Airways' operational or aeronautical security systems, the company said. The company apologized, saying that Bangkok Airways Public Company Limited takes the protection of passengers' data very seriously, and the airline is deeply sorry for the worry and inconvenience that this malicious incident has caused. Bangkok Airways recommends that passengers contact their bank or credit card provider and change any compromised passwords ASAP. Also, it recommended that passengers keep their eyes out for suspicious or unsolicited calls and or emails, particularly phishing attempts claiming to be coming from Bangkok Airways that attempt to gather personal data. The attackers claim that the password security used by Bangkok Airways is not secure and that they used password with an @ for the A and a 0 for the O to protect all systems and domain admins. That's insane. Now, experts recommend that Bangkok Airways gets their security affairs in order. They need to find out exactly how the attackers got in and ensure they plug that and any other holes they find. For example, don't use password as your password, even if you try to put in an @ or a 0. The Conti ransomware gang is targeting Microsoft Exchange servers, leveraging exploits with recently disclosed ProxyShell vulnerabilities. ProxyShell is the name of 3 vulnerabilities that could be chained by an unauthenticated remote attacker to gain code execution on Microsoft Exchange servers. The 3 vulnerabilities used in ProxyShell attacks are CVE-2021-26084 which is pre-auth path confusion, which leads to ACL bypass. It was patched in April by that KB. CVE-2021-34523, which is an elevation of privilege on Exchange PowerShell backend, patched also in April. And CVE-2021-31207, post-auth arbitrary file write leads to remote code execution, which is patched in May. Now, just because these patches are out there doesn't mean that everybody's installing them. The vulnerabilities are exploited remotely through Microsoft Exchange's client access service running on port 443 in IIS. In a recent attack, while researchers from Sophos providing incident response support to a customer discovered that the threat actors breached the network exploiting Microsoft Exchange ProxyShell vulnerabilities. PRIVATELOG, a new malware that leverages common log file to avoid detection. FireEye's Mandiant cybersecurity researchers spotted a new malware family named PRIVATELOG that relies on the common log file system to hide a second stage payload in registry transaction files to avoid detection. Common log file system is a general purpose logging subsystem that is accessible to both kernel mode as well as user mode applications for building high performance transaction logs. It was introduced with Windows Server 2003 R2 and included in later Windows operating systems. CLFS can be used for both data logging as well as for event logging. CLFS is used by TXF and TXR to store transactional state changes before they commit a transaction. Binary log files created from CLFS cannot be viewed by any integrated Windows tool. Experts also provided technical details of another malware using CLFS dubbed StashLog that was used as a private log installer. PrivateLog and StashLog rely on the Common Log File System, or CLFS, to hide a second stage payload in registry transaction files, reads the analysis published by Mandiant. The malware has yet to be detected in attacks in the wild, and the researchers believe it is still under development or the result of a research project. Experts pointed out that the malware leveraged CLFS because there are no available tools that can parse CLFS log files. This means that technically it is possible to hide malicious data as LOF records. Attacks against SolarWinds Serv-U SW were possible due to the lack of ASLR mitigation. Software vendor SolarWinds did not enable ASLR anti-exploit mitigation that was available since the launch of Windows Vista in 2006, allowing the attackers to launch targeted attacks in July. Microsoft, which investigated the incident, said the attacks against SolarWinds file transfer servers were carried out by a Chinese hacking group tracked as Dev0322. Threat actors exploited a zero-day remote code execution flaw tracked as CVE-2021-26084 in Serv-U products. SolarWinds was informed of the zero-day by Microsoft. The issue affects Serv-U managed file transfer server and Serv-U secured FTP. According to Microsoft, the flaw was exploited in attacks against a limited targeted set of customers by a single threat actor. Now, the issue resides in Serv-U version 15.2.3 HF1. In all prior versions, the vendor released Serv-U version 15.2.3 hotfix HF2 to fix the issue. All other SolarWinds and Enable, formerly SolarWinds MSP, are not affected by this issue, including the Orion platform and all Orion platform modules. The experts pointed out that this issue is not linked to the SolarWinds supply chain attack. Later, Microsoft provided full details about the attacks and the attack chain used by the threat actors. The researchers refer to the threat actor as a dev, which means that it is classified as a development group, and assign each dev group a unique number, dev with blah blah blah, for tracking purposes. Microsoft has observed, in this case Dev0322, targeting entities in the U.S. defense industrial base sector and software companies. According to the excerpts, the apt group is based in China and employed commercial VPN solutions and compromised consumer routers in their attack infrastructure. Microsoft first spotted Dev0322 attacks by analyzing Microsoft 365 Defender telemetry during a routine investigation. Gutenberg template library and Redux framework bugs plague WordPress sites. Another one of my dailies in case you missed it. 2 vulnerabilities have been found in the Gutenberg template library and Redux framework plugin for WordPress, which is installed in more than 1 million websites. They could allow arbitrary plugin installation, post deletions, and access to potentially sensitive information about a site's configuration. The first bug, CVE-2021-26084 rates 7.1 out of 10 on the CVSS scale, making it high severity. It arises from the plugin's use of the WordPress REST API, which processes requests to install and manage the blocks. It fails to authorize user permissions correctly according to WordFence. The second medium severity vulnerability, CVE-2021-38314, rates 5.3 on the CVSS scale. It exists because the Gutenberg template library and Redux framework plugin registers several AJAX actions available to unauthenticated users, one of which is deterministic and predictable, making it possible to uncover what the support hash for a site may be. WhatsApp CVE 2021-1910 bug could have led to user data exposure. A high-severity security vulnerability in WhatsApp's image filter feature, tracked as CVE 2020-1910, could have been exploited by attackers to read sensitive information from the app's memory by simply sending a specially crafted image over the messaging app. The flaw was discovered by Checkpoint experts on November 10, 2020. They discovered that the issue can allow attackers to crash WhatsApp by switching between various filters on the malicious GIF files. The vulnerability is an out-of-bounds read-write issue and stems from applying specific image filters to a rogue image and sending the altered image to a target user. The flaw has received a CVSS score of 7.8. A missing bounds check in WhatsApp for Android prior to version 2.21.1.13 and WhatsApp Business for Android prior to 2.21.1.13 could have allowed out-of-bounds read and write if a user applied specific image filters to a specifically crafted image and sent the resulting image, reads the advisory published by WhatsApp. Now, Checkpoint researchers used a fuzzing technique starting with a set of images of a few image types, in other words, bitmaps, icons, GIFs, JPEGs, and PNGs, and applied various modifications to them in a process called mutation. Then the experts analyzed the images provided as input that caused the app to crash. The experts started to fuzz the interesting WhatsApp libraries and discovered that the flaw resides in the apply filter into buffer function that handles image filters. The function takes the source image, applies the filter chosen by the user, and copies the result into the destination buffer. Bluetooth bugs open billions of devices to denial of service code and code execution. Another one of my dailies. Researchers have disclosed a group of 16 different vulnerabilities collectively dubbed Bracktooth, which impact billions of devices that rely on Bluetooth Classic for communication. According to an academic paper from the University of Singapore, the bugs are found in the closed commercial BT stack used by at least 1,400 embedded chip components that can lead to a host of attack types. Mainly, denial of service via firmware crashes. The term BRAC is more Norwegian for crash. One of the bugs can also lead to arbitrary code execution. The team analyzed 13 pieces of BT hardware from 11 vendors. So far, there have been 20 CVEs assigned across them, with 4 vulnerabilities pending CVE assignments from Intel and Qualcomm. Some of the bugs are patched, others are in the process of being patched, but researchers said in the paper it is highly probable that many other products beyond the 1,400 entries observed in Bluetooth listing are affected by Bracktooth, including BT system on chips, BT modules, and additional BT end products. So far, the list of companies affected include Intel, Texas Instruments, Cypress, Bluetooth Technology, Tsuhai, Geely Technology, Actions Technology, Qualcomm, Espressi-If Systems, Harman International, and Scilabs. For some reason, I had this pronunciation much better in my daily, but whatever. The researchers uncovered 3 main attack scenarios for the bugs, the most severe of which results in ACE, or arbitrary code execution, on Internet of Things devices. The most critical vulnerability, CVE 2021-28139, affects ESP32 socks, a series of low-cost, low-power SoC microcontrollers with integrated Wi-Fi and dual-mode Bluetooth from the vendor Espressif. These are commonly found in IoT appliances used in industry automation, smart home device, personal finance gadgets, and more. Second attack scenario can lead to denial of service in laptops and smartphones. Researchers were able to achieve this using gear containing Intel's AX200 SoCs and Qualcomm WCN 3990s SoCs. One of the DOS bugs, CVE 2021-34147, exists because of a failure in the SoC to free resources upon receiving an invalid LMP timing accuracy response from a connected BT device, otherwise a slave. A third attack scenario was discovered while probing various BT speakers, specifically the My Portable Bluetooth Speaker, MDZ36dB, BT headphones, and BT audio modules, and an unbranded BT audio receiver. The Mozzie botnet continues to spread despite the arrest of its alleged author, and experts believe that it will run for many more years. Mozzie is an IoT botnet that borrows the code from Mirai variants and the Gefgite Malware. It appeared on the threat landscape in late 2019. The Mozzie botnet was spotted by security experts from 360 NetLab. At the time of its that it was discovered, it was actively targeting Netgear, D-Link, and Huawei routers by probing for weak telnet passwords to compromise them. According to the researchers, in the last month of 2019, the botnet was mainly involved in distributed denial of service attacks. It implements a custom extended distributed hash table protocol that provides a lookup service similar to a hash table. This kind of implementation makes it simple to add or remove nodes with minimum workaround rekeys and build a P2P network. NetLab researchers infected more than 1.5 million systems worldwide. 830,000 are from China. NetLab researchers found that 1.5 million systems and 830,000 out of China were infected. Earlier in August, Microsoft researchers reported that the Mozzie botnet was improved by implementing new capabilities to target network gateways manufactured by Netgear, Huawei, and ZTE. Microsoft Security Threat Intelligence Center and Section 52 at Azure Defender for IoT have monitored a new evolution of the threat that extends the listing of targets. The bot spreads by brute force devices online or by exploiting known unpatched vulnerabilities in target devices. The capabilities to target Netgear, Huawei, and ZTE gateways allow the bot to increase its resistance to takedowns. Experts noticed that the malware also prevents remote access by blocking the following ports used by the above gateways. Now, I had this story in my last weekly, but it's here again because even though it's not really in this article, it's only in the title. The actual creator of botnet was arrested. Here we go with another story out of the dailies. Brute force attacks target inboxes for gift card data. Threat actors are compromising up to 100,000 inboxes daily in a campaign that targets gift card and customer loyalty program data in hopes of reselling it or cashing in on freebies, as security research has found. The actors behind the scam, outlined in a post by Brian Krebs on Krebs on Security, have been mass testing millions of usernames and passwords against the world's major email providers each day for the past 3 years, according to the post. Their primary focus seems to be to steal the low-hanging fruit of gift card data, which amounts to cash in your inbox. Whether it's related to hotel or airline rewards or just Amazon gift cards, after they successfully log into the account, their scripts start pilfering inboxes looking for things that could be of value. Now, as security solutions and protections to combat payment fraud improve, cyber criminals have to find sneakier ways to make money from online scams, and this is one of them. The gift card scam underscores the fact that everything is connected in security, and that organizations should think beyond merely monitoring for payment fraud to ensure online transactions are secure. LockFile Ransomware uses a new intermittent encryption technology. LockFile Ransomware gang started its operations last month. Recently, it was spotted targeting Microsoft Exchange servers using the recently disclosed ProxyShell vulnerabilities. The popular security expert Kevin Beaumont was one of the first researchers to report that the LockFile operators are using the Microsoft Exchange PowerShell, ProxyShell, and the Windows Petit Potem vulnerabilities to take over Windows domains. Sophos researchers discovered that the group is now leveraging a new technique called intermittent encryption to speed up the encryption process. The operators behind LockFile Ransomware encrypt alternate blocks of 16 bytes in a document to evade detection. This is the first time that Sophos experts have seen this approach used in a ransomware attack. Partial encryption is generally used by ransomware operators to speed up the encryption process, and we've seen Black Matter, DarkSide, and Lockbit 2.0 ransomware implement this technique, said Mark Lohman, Director of Engineering at Sophos. What sets LockFile apart is that, unlike the others, it doesn't encrypt the first few blocks. Instead, the LockFile encrypts every other 16 bytes of a document. This means that a file such as a text document remains partially readable and looks statistically like the original. This trick can be successful against ransomware detection software that relies on inspecting content using statistical analysis to detect encryption. Sophos experts spotted the new technique while analyzing a LockFile sample, and there's the hash of it. The ransomware leverages Windows Management Interface to terminate critical processes associated with virtualization software and databases to remove any locks that could interfere with file encryption. Now, the victims of the LockFile ransomware gang are in the manufacturing, financial services, engineering, legal, business services, and travel and tourism sectors. The ransom note used by the LockFile gang is similar to the one used by Lockbit, ransomware gangs, operators, and references the Conti gang in the email address used, like contact@contipopper.com. Threat actors can remotely disable Fortress SO3 Wi-Fi home security systems. Researchers at cybersecurity firm Rapid7 discovered 2 vulnerabilities that can be exploited by hackers to remotely disarm the Fortress SO3 Wi-Fi security systems manufactured by Fortress Security Store. The Fortress SO3 Wi-Fi home security system allows users to build their own alarm system to secure their homes and small businesses. It supports security cameras, window and door sensors, glass break sensors, vibration and motion sensors, and smoke, gas, water alarms. The company provides its systems to thousands of clients and continued customers. The flaws tracked as CVE 2021-39276 has a CVS score of 5.3 and CVE 2021-39277 has a CVS score of 5.7, can be abused by a threat actor to gain unauthorized access to the system. The CVE 2021-39276 flaw is an insecure cloud API deployment, while the CVE 2021-39277 issue can allow anyone with radio frequency signal range to capture and replay RF signals to alter systems behavior. CVE 2021-39276 describes an instance of CWE-287. Specifically, it describes an insecure cloud API deployment which allows unauthenticated users to trivially learn a secret that can then be used to alter the system's functionality remotely, continues the post. It has an initial CVSS score of 5.3, which is medium. CVE 2021-39277 describes an instance of CWE-294, a vulnerability where anyone with radio frequency signal range could capture and replay RF signals to alter systems behavior, and has an initial CVSS score of 5.7. An attacker could exploit the CVE 2021-39276 by knowing the targeted user's email address and use it to query the API and obtain the IMEI number associated with the security system. Once the attacker has obtained the IMEI, he can send unauthenticated post requests to change the behavior of the system, including disarming it. The CVE 2021-39277 flaw can be exploited to launch a radio frequency signal replay attack because communications between different components of this home security system are not properly protected. An attacker in the radio range of the target can capture command and control signals over the air, such as a command to disarm the system, and then replay them at a later time. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise warns customers of pseudo flaw in Aruba AirWave Management Platform. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is warning of a high-severity privilege escalation vulnerability in pseudo-open-source program used within its Aruba AirWave Management Platform. The Aruba AirWave Management Platform is a real-time monitoring and security alert platform designed by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. An unprivileged and unauthenticated local attacker could exploit the vulnerability to gain root privileges on a vulnerable system or vulnerable host. Experts warn that this flaw could be chained with other vulnerabilities by an attacker with low privileges to escalate them once obtained access to the target system. The CVE 2021-3156 was discovered by Qualys researchers in January. It has allowed any local user to gain root privileges on Unix-like operating systems without authentication. The pseudo CVE 2021-3156 vulnerability, dubbed Baron Same Edit, or Smedit, Same Dit, is a heap-based buffer overflow that was reported on January 13th and disclosed at the end of January to give the development team the time to address the issue. HPE confirmed that the flaw affected the Airwave Management Platform prior to version 8.2.13.0 that was released on June 18, 2021. HPE also provided a workaround for HPE Airwave customers and pointed out that the Aruba is not aware of any attacks in the wild against Aruba products exploiting the above vulnerability. Microsoft Exchange ProxyGen flaw can allow attackers to read your emails. Technical details of a serious vulnerability in the Microsoft Exchange server dubbed ProxyToken, CVE 2021-33766, were publicly disclosed. The issue could be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker to access emails from a target account. An attacker can trigger the flaw by sending a specially crafted request to web services within the Exchange control panel application and access messages from a victim's inbox. An attacker could exploit the issue to access mailbox settings and set up an email forwarding rule in order to receive the messages sent to victims. As a prerequisite for the attacker needs to have an account on the same Exchange server as the victim. This vulnerability allows remote attackers to disclose sensitive information on affected installations of Microsoft Exchange Server. Authentication is not required to exploit this vulnerability, reads the advisory published by Zero Day Initiative. The specific flaw exists within the authentication of requests to web services within the ECP web application. By issuing a crafted request, an attacker can bypass authentication. An attacker can leverage this vulnerability to disclose information from the server. Microsoft addressed the ProxyToken flaw in July. It has been rated with a CVSS score of 7.5 because it could be exploited by an attacker with an account on the same Exchange server as the victim. So the user has to have an account on the same server, same Exchange server. So it's not just anybody willy-nilly, but still it has a CVSS score of 7.5, which is pretty severe. 1 gigabyte of data belonging to Puma available on Marketo, the emerging underground marketplace of stolen data. Marketo, available in the Tor network, announced the publication of data presumably stolen from sportswear manufacturer Puma. The ad on Marketo claims to have about 1 gigabyte of data stolen from the company that are now auctioned to the highest bidder. Cyber criminals behind Marketo claim to be operators of an organized marketplace of stolen data, and not as a typical ransomware group distributing malicious code to disrupt IT operations by blocking the network of the victim and by encrypting available files on various data storage. One of the unique features provided by Marketo, the ability to bid on stolen data, which obviously creates competition between parties interested in data acquisition, including the end victim. At the time of this writing, 157 threat actors have made their bid to buy the sensitive data. Some of the files stolen from Puma were published on Marketo. Most of them contain source code of internal management applications potentially linked to the company's product management portal. This data could be used by threat actors to orchestrate a more sophisticated attack against the company. Now, experts believe that, or have analyzed the code, and they believe they found evidence that files of the organization might have been stolen as a result of a data breach of a third-party software provider. So if you go back to the beginning of this episode where I was saying it's not just big companies, it's also small guys, here we have a prime case where Puma wasn't necessarily directly affected, but a third-party provider who is building software for them most likely had a data breach or was attacked, and through that data breach, 1 gigabyte of sensitive data from Puma was acquired. Cybercriminal sells tool to hide malware in AMD and NVIDIA GPUs. This was in one of my dailies, in case you missed it. Cybercriminals are making strides towards attacks with malware that can execute code from graphics processing units or of a compromised system. While the method is not new and demo code has been published before, projects so far came from the academic world or were incomplete and unrefined. According to the advertiser, the project works only on Windows systems that support versions 2.0 and above of the OpenCL framework for executing code on various processors, GPUs included. The post also mentioned that the author tested the code on graphics cards from Intel, Radeon, and GeForce. Some said this could be Jellyfish, but the seller rejected the association with the Jellyfish malware, saying that their method is different and does not rely on code mapping to user space. SolarWinds hackers targeted Autodesk in latest confirmed fallout from the cyber-espionage campaign. The list of victims keeps growing for the unsuspected or the suspected Russian hackers who breached a U.S. federal contractor in order to gather intelligence from throughout the federal government. Autodesk said in a recent filing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that hackers had targeted the firm with the Sunburst malicious software. Cozy Bear, a state-sponsored Russian hacking group, relied on Sunburst to carry out an attack against SolarWinds, an IT firm that spies used as a foothold into targets throughout the government and private sector. In a 10Q filing to the SEC, Autodesk said it discovered that one of its servers had been compromised and that it had taken steps to remediate the fallout. While we believe that no customer operations or Autodesk products were disrupted as a result of this attack, other similar attacks could have a significant negative impact on our systems and operations, the company said. This seemingly normal lightning cable will leak everything you type. It looks like a lightning cable, it works like a lightning cable, and I can use it to connect my keyboard to my Mac. But it is actually a malicious cable that can record everything I type, including passwords, and wirelessly send that data to a hacker who could be more than a mile away. This is the new version of a series of penetration testing tools made by the security researcher known as MG. MG previously demoed an earlier version of the cables for Motherboard at the DEF CON hacking conference in 2019. Shortly after that, MG said he had successfully moved the cables into mass production, and cybersecurity vendor Hack5 started selling the cables. But the more recent cables come in new physical variations, including Lightning to USB-C, and include more capabilities for hackers to play with. There were people who said that Type-C cables were safe from this type of implant because there isn't enough space. So I clearly had to prove that wrong, MG told Motherboard in an online chat. The OMG cables, or oh my god cables as they're called, work by creating a Wi-Fi hotspot itself that a hacker can connect to from their own device. From there, an interface in an ordinary web browser lets the hacker start recording keystrokes. The malicious implant itself takes up around half the length of the plastic shell. We move on to patches. Cisco fixes a critical flaw in Enterprise NFVIS for which POC exploit exists. Cisco announced the availability of a security patches for a critical authentication bypass flaw, CVE-2021-34746, in Enterprise NFV infrastructure software, for which proof-of-concept exploit code is already available. An attacker can exploit the issue to bypass authentication and log in as an administrator to the affected device. By virtualizing and abstracting the network services from the underlying hardware, NFVIS allows virtual network functions to be managed independently and to be provisioned dynamically. The CVE 2021-34746 flaw was reported by Orange Group security researcher Cyril Chatras, and the issue received a CVSS score of 9.8. Wow. The vulnerability affects the TACAX authentication, authorization, and accounting feature of Enterprise NFVIS. It is due to incomplete validation of user-supplied input when it is passed to an authenticated script or authentication script. Cisco pointed out that there are no workarounds that address this vulnerability. The vulnerability affects Enterprise NFVIS release 4.5.1 only if the TACAX external authentication method is configured. Cisco fixed it with Enterprise NFVIS release 4.6.1. QNAP will patch OpenSSL flaws in its NAS devices. Taiwanese network-attached storage appliance maker QNAP announced that it is assessing the potential impact of two recently addressed flaws in OpenSSL on its products. The company also announced that it is working on security updates that address these vulnerabilities. An out-of-bounds read vulnerability in OpenSSL has been reported to affect QNAP NAS running QTS, QUTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud. If exploited, the vulnerability allows remote attackers to disclose memory data or execute a denial-of-service attack, reads the advisory published by QNAP. QNAP is thoroughly investigating the case. We will release security updates and provide further information as soon as possible. The two vulnerabilities are CVE 2021-3711 and CVE 2021-3712. They are respectively a remote code execution and denial of service. Now, CVE 2021-3711 is a high-severity buffer overflow flaw that could allow an attacker to change an application's behavior or cause the app to crash. The vulnerability ties the decryption of SM2 encrypted data. The changes depend on the targeted application and data it maintains, in other words, credentials, in the heap while the issue is exploited. CVE 2021-3712 is a medium severity vulnerability that can be exploited by attackers to trigger a denial of service condition. The flaw could also result in the disclosure of private memory contents such as private keys or sensitive plaintext. Taiwan vendor Synology also announced that the above vulnerabilities in the OpenSSL impact some of its products. So there you have it. The Cybersecurity Weekly for August 30th, 31st through September 6th is done. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to share and subscribe and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.